Hi, and welcome to The Regulated Mother. I'm your host, Afshan Tafler, nervous system resilience coach and mother of a hypersensitive, high needs child. If you're raising a differently wired kid with PDA, autism, OCD, ADHD, or big emotional needs, this is a space for you. Here we talk about what most people don't, how it really feels, how your nervous system responds, and how to find your way back to calm, courage, and connection, even on the hardest days. You're not alone. Let's begin. Have you ever felt like no matter what you do with your child, you're stuck? Maybe you finally see progress, a new skill, a calmer week, a breakthrough moment, and then, just like that, it slips away. You're right back where you started, and the disappointment cuts so deep. It feels like you'll never get ahead. I know that feeling intimately. As a mom of a hypersensitive, high needs PDA autistic child, I've lived through these cycles of progress and then regression. They can leave you questioning yourself, your child, and even your worth as a parent. But here's a question I want us to explore together today. What if stuckness isn't the enemy? What if stuckness is part of the journey? And what if it's teaching us something we can't see yet? And what if, when we begin to see stuckness from a different perspective, we paradoxically become unstuck? So if you've ever felt like you're failing or that you and your child are endlessly stuck, this episode is for you. Let's begin. So it had been 5 months since my son had taken a bath or shower. 5 months. We were surviving with scalp sprays of water and vinegar, wet, soapy towel wipe downs, these strategies that my survival system was scouring from the internet, trying to keep him clean enough. My fear was mounting, and I worked hard on regulating myself so I wouldn't put pressure on him. I dropped hints gently, reminding him how much he loved water, planting seeds of memories we had together about the fun we'd had in the past, taking baths and showers. And then I'd let it go, allowing those seeds to germinate. And to keep my fear in check, I found myself thinking of this interview that I had seen of a former homeless woman who hadn't showered for a year, but was now thriving. It helped me to let go of the fear and know deeply that my son would be okay too. And then one day, everything shifted. We were having fun in the bathroom, and I casually turned on the shower. I walked out to grab extra towels, and when I came back, there he was, undressed, stepping in willingly. I could hardly believe it. For 2 whole weeks, he wanted to shower almost every day. It felt like bliss. Relief flooded my system. We're moving forward. We're finally making progress. But then, just as suddenly, it stopped. He refused again. No coaxing worked, and we were right back where we started, stuck. So if you've lived this cycle, you know the drop. One moment you're celebrating progress, the next you're back in regression, and it feels like everything is unraveling. And it's not just our kids. We feel it in ourselves too. We start doing the nervous system work, we're calmer, we're more present, and then a big trigger hits, we snap, we spiral, and it feels like nothing is changing. So when we feel stuck like this, our nervous system often slips into dorsal vagal shutdown. It feels hopeless. We lose perspective. The sense of choice disappears. The body registers inescapable danger and defaults to collapse. This is not weakness, it's biology. This can then turn into what psychologist Martin Seligman calls learned helplessness. So when repeated efforts don't bring change, the brain begins to believe nothing I do matters. We shut down, not because we failed, but because our system is protecting us from the pain we can feel when all of our efforts do not result in the change we want to see. As Pierre Levine teaches in somatic experiencing, trauma traps the nervous system in loops, into fight, flight, and freeze loops, long after the original threat is gone. That's why stuckness doesn't just feel like a passing mood, it's the body literally replaying an unfinished survival response, which comes in the form of, I'm trying to affect change. I'm doing everything possible, but I'm stuck and I cannot change things. This survival response playing out today can actually be one that was created many years ago in our childhood. And Stephen Porges, who founded the polyvagal theory, helps us to see why. When there's no way out, the system drops into dorsal vagal shutdown as the last line of protection. Stuckness is the body saying, this is too much. The only way to survive is to collapse. That's why you end up feeling so horrible when you're in this place of stuckness. So after my son stopped showering, I had to move on and be okay for him. I couldn't show him my deep disappointment and despair. So I bottled it up and I kept going, showing him that I loved and accepted him no matter what. Then a few days later, I felt this heaviness start to creep up in my body. This particular day had been going well, actually. I was baking in the kitchen. I felt deeply present. My feet were steady on the floor. I was very present. My hands were moving slowly and intentionally. I was connected with my son too and attuning to his bids for connection. And because I was grounded, I noticed it, a quiet heaviness in my chest, a sadness, a grief. I didn't push it away. I held it lightly, promising myself I'd come back to it. Later in the backyard, when I had a few moments to myself, I finally turned inward. As someone trained in internal family systems therapy, or IFS, I know how to be with emotions as a part of me instead of blending with that part and the emotion. So I asked this heaviness inside, what do you want me to know? And the response came quickly. I just want to make progress. And I feel like we're not making progress. So that landed because the truth was we had experienced so many ups and downs, progress followed by regression, tiny wins followed by the same old struggles, school refusals, hygiene battles, even just leaving the house was so hard for my son. It often felt like we were trapped in a never-ending loop. And as parents, especially of hypersensitive, autistic, ADHD, or PDA children, we tend to equate their progress with our worth. If they're stuck, we feel stuck. If they're not thriving, we feel like failures. So I stayed with this part of me and I gently asked, what are you believing about yourself if we're not making progress? And I hear back, I feel like we're failing. And then I asked, and what are you afraid will happen if we're failing? And I hear back, we'll never get ahead. We'll always be stuck. And then I asked, and what are you afraid that means about you? And then I hear back that I'm not good enough. I just want to feel good enough. There it was, the deeper wound, the belief that progress equals worth. So I asked inside, where did you learn that being good enough depends on forward movement? Like, where did this definition come from, right? That being good enough depends on us always moving forward. And the answer was, just look around. It's everywhere in education, spirituality, coaching. Everyone's telling us to grow, improve, not stay stuck. And it's true. Our society's model of success is deeply conditioned. We're taught that we should be independent and have self-control and be respectful and responsible, and we should be able to take care of ourselves, including our hygiene, and we should be able to build relationships and learn and do well in school. Well, these are beautiful qualities, and they're not, but, the big but, is they're not the only measures of a good life. Okay, like my system was seeing that, oh, these are the measures of a good life, but they're not the only measures of a good life. And yet, they're the lens we inherited, the lens we can't help but hold our children against. But what if our children weren't meant to follow the same script that we followed? What if success for them looks completely different? So the survival system craves visible change, right? It equates progress with safety. It wants life to move in a straight line. So we have improvement, then more improvement, and success. But that's not how growth works. In fact, growth mindset research, which is some of the work of Carol Dweck, she analyzes the growth mindset research and writes in her books. She shows that real learning and development are messy and non-linear and full of setbacks that are actually part of deep integration. And believing that growth is linear actually creates more stress, anxiety, and shame. It sets us up for disappointment and wreaks havoc on our nervous system when things inevitably regress. And the nervous system, too, doesn't grow in straight lines. It expands, it contracts like waves. You make progress, and a new layer gets triggered, and you feel like you're back to square one. But it's really the next layer of the onion to be peeled back and healed. But we don't see it that way. When we cling to the idea of linear progress, we ride this roller coaster of soaring during the gains and then crashing during the regressions. So back to my part. I asked my part, what if forward movement isn't always something you can see on the outside? What if it's about how you relate to the moment, even the stuckness? And what if simply being with what is, with awareness and presence, is progress too? That idea lit something up in her, in me. A sense of hope started to pierce through the grief. But then the part of me asked, what about when the old patterns come back? When he regresses again, and it feels like we're back at square one? And I got it, because as I've told you, we just experienced that. My son had finally been able to take regular baths for a couple of weeks, only to suddenly stop again. So I offered another reframe. Yes, the same patterns might return, but what if the intensity is less now? What if the time between regressions is longer? What if growth looks like spiraling upwards and not necessarily climbing in a straight line? I reminded her of progress in the other areas that we were seeing that she hadn't noticed because of this hygiene regression and how big it felt. And something shifted. The grief began to lift even more. The nervous system softened. I felt hope and even joy rising. So you see, the nervous system feels safest when it has choice. And choice really begins with a shift in perspective. If we can see things differently, we open space for our system to shift. When we view stuckness not as failure, but as sacred pause, necessary integration, part of the learning journey, then we're no longer trapped and we're moving. That's the paradox. You feel stuck, but the moment you realize that being with the stuckness is part of the journey, you're no longer stuck. So what can we learn from the stuckness? Stuckness isn't just something to endure. It's a teacher. When we feel like nothing is moving forward, we're invited into the very life skills we need most as parents of high needs children. The skill of allowing what is, letting go of the constant fight against reality, and instead softening into the moment as it is. The skill of presence, staying here in this moment rather than spiraling into fears about the future or judgments from the past. the skill of self-compassion, holding ourselves gently when grief and frustration or despair rise up, instead of criticizing ourselves for not doing better or not doing enough. The skill of regulating ourselves, calming and anchoring our nervous system, even when progress feels absent, when things feel overwhelming, or when hope is hard to find. The skill of reframing, seeing stuff that's not as failure, but as sacred pause, integration, a chance to learn, or simply the next step of the journey. The skill of letting go of attachment to expectations. This is a huge one. Okay, allowing progress and change to nourish us when it's there without demanding that they remain there forever in order for life to feel okay. And the skill of holding on to hope and new possibilities, trusting that change is always possible, even if it's not visible at the moment. And here's something powerful. When we can change how we see stuckness, we stop seeing our children as a threat to ours and to their survival and success. Our nervous system feels safer, and our children feel that too. They experience us as more grounded, less fearful, more open. This creates a ripple of safety for them. They are able to then accept themselves more. Stuckness then isn't just a block on the path. It is the path. It teaches us presence, acceptance, compassion, resilience, perspective, and trust. These are the qualities that help us thrive even in the hardest seasons. So part of the work of parenting high needs kids is also learning to notice the littlest progress, but without clinging to it. Okay, and that's a real practice for us parents. So when our child finally does something new or, is able to overcome a certain hurdle, our nervous system lights up with relief. We've made it. Things are getting better. And then we attach. We expect it to stay. We feel like we need it to keep happening in order for us to be okay. But attachment to progress, especially if you have a PDA autistic kid, sets us up for more pain when regression comes. Instead of being nourished by the glimmer, we crash when it disappears. So the practice here is to let progress be what it is, a moment to appreciate, to take in, to allow our system to soften. Let it nourish us. Let it remind us that change is possible. But don't demand that it has to be that way all the time for life to feel good. Don't get attached to it as the only way you can feel okay and happy. And here's something else. When we also widen our lens of what counts as progress, our conditioned brains want to measure success by independence, responsibility, self-control, the markers we were taught, right, that define a good life. But we can also widen our lens of what counts as progress. We don't have to see progress as just the way we were taught it, right? But we can see progress and success in the smaller, quieter ways. That's what we want to try and do. And that's how we end up feeling, more okay in life with our kids. So maybe progress is a single moment of eye contact, a giggle after a week of tension, a child asking for help when they usually shut down or activate because they're so frustrated they actually ask for help. Even if it doesn't match the old script of what our child should be able to do, there are signs of their nervous system finding capacity. And can we see that? When we can notice these tiny glimmers without attaching to permanence, we become more regulated ourselves. And from regulation, hope and creativity naturally arise. So let's try to find a new way to define success. I invite you to ask yourself, what definitions of success are you still carrying? What stories are you holding about progress and worth? And who told you that you always had to be moving forward to be good enough? Because those definitions can be rewritten. Maybe, just maybe, this life with your hypersensitive high needs child isn't about arriving anywhere. Maybe it's about shedding old stories and finding wholeness in the journey itself. Maybe it's about finding unconditional love and acceptance for you and your child, just as you are, even in the seeming stuckness. When we redefine success, we heal. And when we see stuckness differently and learn from it, it all becomes a purposeful part of the path. And when we let go of the pressure to always do, fix, or move, we create space for our nervous system to rest. We create space for a new world, one that's safe for us and for our children too. So if this episode resonated with you, I invite you to leave a comment or share with others who may need this message too. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to The Regulated Mother. If this episode helped you feel a little more seen, grounded, or hopeful, I'd love for you to share it with another mom who might need it too. And if you want more nervous system tools and support, head to my website, illuminateyou.ca, to grab my free ebook and video series. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. You're doing brave and meaningful work.